2 years ago I discovered the most painful betrayal of my life. My own son chose his manipulative wife over his mother, who had sacrificed everything for him. What happened next was an epic revenge that changed our family forever. Let me tell you the whole story so you can understand why I had to make such a drastic decision. Hello, my name is Victoria Blackwood, I'm 58 years old and live in Chicago. For 32 years, I dedicated my entire life to raising my son Adrian, believing that one day he would appreciate everything I had done for him. But I was wrong. Let me start from the beginning so you can understand the depth of my pain and the justice that followed. Adrian was born in 1992 when I was 26 years old. His father, David Blackwood, left us when Adrian was only 3 months old. David said he wasn't ready for the responsibility of being a father and walked out without looking back. From that moment, I became both mother and father to Adrian. I remember clearly those early days when I worked 2 jobs to support us. During the day, I worked as a secretary at a law firm downtown, and at night I cleaned offices to make extra money. Every sacrifice I made was for Adrian, believing that one day my son would understand how much his mother loved him. When Adrian was 5, I saved enough money to move us from our cramped studio apartment to a small 2-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. I wanted Adrian to have a proper childhood with his own room and a backyard to play in. Every weekend, I would take him to the park, teach him to ride a bike, and read him bedtime stories. With a loving voice, I would tell him every night, "Adrian, you are the most important thing in Mommy's life." Every time I said that, Adrian would hug me tight and say, "I love you too, Mommy." During Adrian's school years, I never missed a single parent-teacher conference, school play, or sports game. When he wanted to join the soccer team, I worked overtime for 3 months to afford the equipment and fees. When he showed interest in music, I bought him a used guitar and paid for lessons even though it meant eating ramen noodles for dinner most nights. Every decision I made was centered around giving Adrian the best life possible, even if it meant sacrificing my own happiness. When Adrian turned 18, he received a partial scholarship to Northwestern University to study business. I was so proud of him, but the scholarship only covered tuition. I had to take out loans and work 3 jobs to pay for his living expenses, books, and everything else he needed. During his college years, I barely saw him except for holidays, but I understood he was busy with his studies. Every month, I would send him care packages filled with his favorite snacks and a letter telling him how proud I was of him. After Adrian graduated in 2014, he got a good job at a marketing firm in Chicago. Finally, I thought, all my sacrifices had paid off. Adrian was successful, and we could spend more time together. For the first 2 years after graduation, Adrian would visit me every weekend. We would cook dinner together, watch movies, and talk about his work. Those were some of the happiest moments of my life. I truly believed that Adrian appreciated everything I had done for him. But everything changed when Adrian met Isabella Torres in 2017. She was a lawyer at a prestigious firm downtown, ambitious and calculating. From the moment I met Isabella, I could sense something wasn't right about her. She had this fake smile and condescending tone whenever she spoke to me. During their first dinner at my house, Isabella looked around and said with a slight smirk, "What a cozy little place you have here, Mrs. Blackwood." The way she emphasized little made my skin crawl, but I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt for Adrian's sake. Over the next few months, I noticed Adrian changing. He started visiting less frequently, making excuses about being busy with work or plans with Isabella. When I would call him, our conversations became shorter and more distant. One evening, I asked him directly, "Adrian, is everything okay between us?" He sighed and said, "Mom, I'm just trying to build my own life now, you need to understand that." Hearing those words felt like a knife in my heart, but I told myself this was normal for a young man in love. In 2018, Adrian and Isabella got engaged. When Adrian told me the news, I forced a smile and congratulated him, but deep down I felt like I was losing my son. The wedding planning became a nightmare. Isabella took control of everything and barely included me in any decisions. When I suggested having the reception at a beautiful venue I had researched, Isabella dismissed it immediately, saying, "Victoria, Adrian, and I have different tastes, we want something more sophisticated." Every time she spoke to me, it felt like she was putting me in my place. The wedding took place in June 2019 at an expensive hotel downtown. I had saved for months to buy a beautiful dress and contribute to the wedding costs, but Isabella made sure I knew it wasn't necessary. During the reception, I felt like an outsider at my own son's wedding. Isabella's family dominated every conversation, and I was relegated to a corner table with distant relatives I barely knew. When I tried to give a speech about Adrian, Isabella interrupted me, saying, "Maybe we should keep the speeches short since we have a lot of guests." That night, I went home feeling humiliated and heartbroken. After the wedding, things got even worse. Adrian and Isabella moved into a beautiful house in Lincoln Park, and suddenly I was no longer welcome to visit whenever I wanted. Isabella established visiting rules, saying they needed advance notice and couldn't have visitors on weekends because those were their couple time. When I called Adrian to complain about these restrictions, he said, "Mom, Isabella is my wife now, and we need to respect her boundaries." Hearing my son choose his wife's comfort over our relationship was devastating. During the first year of their marriage, I saw Adrian maybe once a month, and Isabella was always there controlling the conversation. She would interrupt whenever Adrian and I started talking about old memories, redirecting the discussion to their plans or her work achievements. I began to feel like a stranger in my son's life, the son I had raised single-handedly for over 2 decades. The breaking point came in March 2021. I had been feeling unwell for weeks and finally went to see a doctor. After several tests, Dr. Harrison gave me devastating news. I had stage 2 breast cancer and would need immediate treatment. The first person I called was Adrian, crying as I told him about my diagnosis. His response was cold and distant. "Mom, that's terrible news, but you're strong, you'll get through this." When I asked if he could come with me to my first oncology appointment, he said, "I'll try, but I have a big presentation at work this week." The day of my appointment arrived, and I sat in the waiting room alone, hoping Adrian would show up. He never did. After the appointment, I called him crying, "Adrian, I was so scared and alone, why didn't you come?" His response shattered my heart. "Mom, Isabella reminded me that you're a strong woman who has always handled things on your own. She thought it might be better for you to maintain your independence." At that moment, I realized that Isabella had successfully poisoned my son against me. During my 6 months of chemotherapy, Adrian visited me exactly 3 times. Each visit was brief and uncomfortable, with him checking his phone constantly and making excuses to leave early. Meanwhile, my neighbors and friends rallied around me, driving me to treatments and bringing me meals. The contrast was heartbreaking. Strangers were showing me more love than my own son. After completing my treatment in September 2021, I was declared cancer-free, but the emotional damage was permanent. I had lost my hair, my strength, and most importantly, my relationship with Adrian. When I called to share the good news about being cancer-free, Adrian said, "That's great, Mom, I knew you'd beat it." There was no emotion in his voice, no relief, no celebration. It felt like he was talking to an acquaintance, not the mother who had given him everything. The final betrayal came during Christmas 2021. For 30 years, Adrian and I had spent every Christmas together. It was our tradition. But that year, Adrian called me on December 20th and said, "Mom, Isabella and I are spending Christmas with her family this year. They've invited us to their cabin in Aspen." When I reminded him that we had always spent Christmas together, he said coldly, "Mom, I'm married now, traditions have to change." Hearing those words, I felt something die inside me. I spent Christmas Day 2021 completely alone for the first time in my life. Sitting in my empty house, looking at the tree I had decorated hoping Adrian would visit, I made a decision that would change everything. I realized that if Adrian wanted to choose Isabella over the mother who had sacrificed everything for him, then he would learn the true cost of that choice. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Patricia Summers, a sharp woman who had helped me with legal matters for years. I told her everything that had happened and asked, "Patricia, what are my options?" After listening to my story, Patricia said, "Victoria, you have more power than you realize, especially considering your financial contributions to Adrian's life." That's when I learned about the loans I had co-signed for Adrian's education, the money I had lent him for his house down payment, and various other financial entanglements that could be legally pursued. Over the next month, Patricia and I developed a comprehensive plan. First, We reviewed all the financial support I had provided Adrian over the years. The total was staggering: $127,000 in education loans I had co-signed, $35,000 I had lent him for his house down payment, $18,000 for his car, and countless other smaller amounts. All of it was documented, and none of it had been formally repaid. But the money was just the beginning. Patricia discovered that I was listed as a beneficiary on Adrian's life insurance policy through his work, a policy he had forgotten about. More importantly, I was still the emergency contact and medical power of attorney for Adrian, documents he had never updated after marriage. Patricia smiled and said, "Victoria, your son may have forgotten about you emotionally, but legally, you still have significant connections to his life." The first phase of my revenge began in February 2022. I formally demanded repayment of all loans and financial support I had provided Adrian over the years. Patricia sent a legal notice requiring payment within 60 days or we would pursue collection through the courts. When Adrian received the letter, he called me frantically, "Mom, what is this? You can't be serious about wanting this money back." With a calm voice, I replied, "Adrian, you chose to treat me like a stranger, so I'm treating you like one. Strangers pay back their debts." Adrian tried to negotiate, saying he couldn't possibly pay back that amount immediately. I told him through Patricia that I would accept a payment plan with interest, treating it like any other commercial loan. The monthly payments would be $2,800 for 5 years. When Adrian realized the financial burden this would place on his household, he finally understood that his choices had consequences. But I wasn't finished. Phase 2 involved something much more devastating. Through Patricia's investigation, we discovered that Isabella had been having an affair with a partner at her law firm for over a year. The private investigator Patricia hired provided photographic evidence of Isabella entering hotel rooms with this man on multiple occasions. The timing coincided perfectly with when Adrian had started pulling away from me, suggesting that Isabella's betrayal of Adrian had begun around the same time she was working to destroy our relationship. I wrestled with whether to tell Adrian about Isabella's affair. Part of me wanted to protect him from the pain, but then I remembered all those times he had chosen her over me, all the holidays I spent alone, all the times he ignored my calls because she disapproved. I decided that Adrian needed to learn the truth about the woman he had chosen over his mother. On Adrian's 30th birthday in April 2022, I arranged for the evidence of Isabella's affair to be delivered to him at his office. I included a note that said, "Happy birthday, son. This is the woman you chose over your mother. I hope she was worth it." The private investigator had captured photos of Isabella and her lover entering the Ritz-Carlton downtown, kissing in parking garages, and even having dinner at romantic restaurants while Adrian thought she was working late. Adrian called me that evening, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, how did you know about this? How long have you known?" I replied calmly, "I've known for 3 months, Adrian. I hired a private investigator when I decided to treat you like the stranger you wanted me to be." When he asked why I hadn't told him sooner, I said, "Because you made it clear that Isabella's feelings were more important than mine. I assumed you wouldn't want me interfering in your marriage." The confrontation between Adrian and Isabella happened that same night. According to Adrian, Isabella initially denied everything, but when faced with the photographic evidence, she broke down and confessed. She had been having the affair for over a year and had been planning to ask for a divorce once she figured out how to protect her financial assets. Adrian was devastated, realizing that while he was pushing away his mother to please his wife was betraying him with another man. But my revenge wasn't complete yet. Phase 3 was the most satisfying of all. While Isabella was scrambling to save her marriage and career, I made sure her law firm partners learned about her affair with a colleague. Professional misconduct charges were filed, and Isabella faced potential disbarment proceedings. Her prestigious career, which she had valued more than family relationships, was suddenly in jeopardy. Simultaneously, I exercised my rights as Adrian's emergency contact to make some strategic moves. When Adrian had a minor medical emergency in May 2022, the hospital called me first, not Isabella. I made sure to be the one making all his medical decisions, pointedly asking Isabella to wait in the lobby since only immediate family was allowed in certain areas. For the first time in years, Isabella experienced what it felt like to be excluded and treated as secondary. The financial pressure was also taking its toll. The monthly payments I required were straining Adrian and Isabella's household budget. They had to cancel their planned vacation to Europe, downsize their expensive car leases, and significantly reduce their lifestyle. Every month when Adrian sent me the payment, I would send a formal receipt with a note like, "Thank you for your business," or "Payment received from customer account," treating him exactly like the stranger he had wanted me to become. By June 2022, Adrian's marriage was falling apart completely. Isabella moved out after their constant fighting about her affair, the financial stress, and her damaged career prospects. She filed for divorce, trying to claim half of their assets, but she hadn't counted on the financial documentation Patricia and I had compiled. We proved that most of their major purchases had been made possible by money I had provided, complicating her claims significantly. During this time, Adrian began reaching out to me more frequently. At first, his calls were about practical matters, asking for advice about the divorce proceedings or requesting documentation for legal purposes. But gradually, I could hear the loneliness and regret in his voice. One evening in July, he called and said, "Mom, I think I made the biggest mistake of my life." I replied simply, "Yes, Adrian, you did." As summer turned to fall, Adrian's life continued to unravel. Isabella's divorce demands were aggressive, seeking alimony and half of everything despite her affair. Her legal career was effectively over after the ethics investigation, and she was desperate for financial security. Meanwhile, Adrian was still making monthly payments to me while trying to afford divorce attorney fees. The financial strain was enormous. In September 2022, Adrian showed up at my door unannounced for the first time in over a year. He looked exhausted, defeated, and older than his 30 years. With tears in his eyes, he said, "Mom, I'm sorry for everything. I chose the wrong person, and I hurt the one person who truly loved me." I looked at him for a long moment before responding, "Adrian, I spent 30 years of my life devoted to you. I worked multiple jobs, sacrificed my own happiness, and gave you everything I had. When I needed you most, you abandoned me for a woman who was betraying you the entire time." Adrian broke down completely, sobbing as he said, "I know, Mom, I know I messed up everything. Isabella manipulated me into thinking you were being too clingy, too demanding. She convinced me that setting boundaries with you was healthy for our marriage. I was so stupid to believe her." Hearing him finally acknowledge what had happened felt like a small victory, but the damage had been done. Over the next few months, I watched Adrian's world continue to crumble. The divorce was finalized in December 2022, with Isabella receiving a substantial settlement despite her infidelity. Adrian's financial situation was precarious, and he was still obligated to make monthly payments to me for several more years. His confidence was shattered, and he seemed lost without the life he had built with Isabella. But here's where my revenge became truly complete. In January 2023, I made Adrian an offer he couldn't refuse. I told him I would forgive the remaining debt, approximately $89,000, but only under specific conditions. First, he had to acknowledge in writing exactly what he had done wrong and how he had hurt me. Second, he had to agree to regular family counseling sessions to rebuild our relationship. Third, he had to commit to spending every major holiday with me for the next 5 years, no exceptions. Adrian agreed to all my conditions without hesitation. The written apology he provided was 12 pages long, detailing every instance where he had chosen Isabella over me, every time he had ignored my needs, and every way he had failed as a son. Reading it was both heartbreaking and satisfying. Finally, Adrian understood the full extent of his betrayal. The family counseling sessions began in February 2023 and continued for 8 months. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, our therapist, helped Adrian understand how Isabella had systematically isolated him from me using classic manipulation techniques. Adrian learned about emotional abuse patterns and realized that Isabella had been controlling him far more than he had recognized. Most importantly, he began to understand the depth of sacrifice I had made throughout his life. Today, nearly 2 years after I began my revenge, Adrian and I have rebuilt our relationship, but it's fundamentally different than before. Adrian is no longer the entitled young man who took his mother for granted. He's humbled, grateful, and deeply aware of how close he came to losing me forever. He calls me every day, visits twice a week, and makes sure I'm included in every major decision in his life. As for Isabella, her life imploded completely. She lost her law license, struggled to find employment, and eventually moved back in with her parents in California. The last I heard, she was working as a paralegal and trying to rebuild her career from scratch. The ambitious woman who thought she was too good for Adrian's little old mother learned that destroying families comes with a price. Adrian is now 32 years old and recently started dating someone new, a kind nurse named Rachel who treats me with genuine respect and warmth. The difference is striking. Where Isabella tried to exclude me, Rachel includes me. Where Isabella was condescending, Rachel is warm and genuine. Most importantly, she encourages Adrian's relationship with me rather than trying to undermine it. Every Sunday, Adrian comes over for dinner, just like we used to do before Isabella entered our lives. But now these dinners have added meaning because Adrian truly appreciates them. He often tells me, "Mom, I'm so sorry it took me losing everything to realize what I had." Those words mean everything to me because they show that my son finally understands the value of a mother's love. The financial payments Adrian made over 2 years totaled nearly $38,000 before I forgave the remaining debt. That money allowed me to make some improvements to my house and build a small emergency fund, but more importantly, it forced Adrian to understand that his choices had real consequences. Every monthly payment was a reminder of what he had chosen to give up when he abandoned me for Isabella. Looking back, some people might say my revenge was too harsh, that I should have simply forgiven Adrian and moved on. But I believe that sometimes people need to face the full consequences of their actions to truly understand what they've done wrong. Adrian needed to lose everything, his marriage, his financial security, and his sense of himself, to understand what he had thrown away when he chose Isabella over me. Today, our relationship is stronger than it's ever been, but it's built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than the one-sided devotion I used to provide. Adrian knows that I won't tolerate being taken for granted again, and I know that he has learned the value of family loyalty the hard way. The most satisfying part of my revenge wasn't watching Isabella's life fall apart or seeing Adrian struggle financially. It was the moment when Adrian finally looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom, you are the most important person in my life, and I will never let anyone come between us again." That moment made every painful step of my revenge worth it. As I finish telling this story, Adrian is in my kitchen helping me prepare dinner for Rachel's first visit to my house. He's nervous about my approval, asking me repeatedly if the menu is good enough and whether Rachel will feel comfortable. The irony isn't lost on me. The son who once excluded me from his life now desperately wants my blessing on his new relationship. What do you think? Was my revenge justified, or should I have simply forgiven and forgotten? Was it wrong to make my son face the full consequences of his choices, or was it necessary for him to truly understand what he had done? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story. Goodbye, and see you in the next one.